Welcome to the Recycle Podcast, where we discuss everyday issues from a mental health perspective. We are your hosts, Dr. Rashonda Strickland,
Dr. LaFanya Jones-Hines,
and Dr. Nichelle Wall. Now, don't get it twisted. We're not going to be your stereotypical therapist.
What we will be is informative, down to earth, a little spicy, and vulnerable.
All right, interns, turn up your volume, grab your pen and paper. It's supervision time. As a reminder, this podcast is not meant to take the place of a relationship with a licensed mental health professional.
Welcome back to session 85, Between the Sheets.
We told y'all we was getting freaky deaky this month.
I'm still excited.
Yes, I love this month.
Which goes with today's topic.
Yes. So my question to you ladies is, have you ever had a conversation with a partner about what you like and don't like?
Of course. But before I answer that question, I do want to put a disclaimer out there again, for the interns that if we sound different, so this time is not necessarily because we are sick. If you are in Texas, we've had a little mini snowmageddon again.
Yes.
Yes.
So driving on the road so that we can go record was difficult. So we are doing the Zoom again, but we may sound a little different just so that y'all have a little disclaimer out there. But now to answer your question, absolutely. I think that is one of the most important parts of having a sexually healthy relationship is talking about what you like, what you don't like, because every person is going to be different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Definitely. I agree with that. I think initially that was not the case because I think I was like more traditional, I had weird values, I guess, in my head. You don't know what you're doing at a young age. So you're just like, even though I wasn't young, let me not say it like that, Lord. I was an adult.
Mm-hmm.
I was an adult. But,
because we're not ready to go there.
No, we're not. But I was grown. I was at my mama's house. Like I was an adult. But I guess at the beginning, I just kind of was like, oh, I should just go with the flow. This person obviously knows what they're doing. But then once you get older, you're like, these jokers don't know what they doing. They don't got the same body parts. So I need to educate myself, and I need to be able to effectively communicate what I want and need in this experience. So
I would completely agree with that. I know you got to answer Dr. Jones-Hines. I'm sorry, but I would completely agree with what you're saying, Dr. Wall, in that as a young lady, I was much more traditional in mindset, and then as I probably hit my mid 20s, I say that late end of early 20s, like 24, 23, 24. I started to become more about myself and what I liked versus early on. It wasn't necessarily a question about what I liked. It was more, what do they like?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I agree with everything you ladies just said. In my young adult ages, younger in my 20s, I didn't know what I liked because I wasn't experienced. So I knew what I didn't like.
Mm-hmm.
So I was able to describe what I didn't like. But because I also wasn't as experienced either, I wasn't sure what I liked. Yeah. So it wasn't until I got more experience that I was like, okay, I don't like this. So,
and I think that also comes with, understanding yourself just in a general sense, not necessarily just in a sexual sense, but as you continue to get older and you learn more about who you are as a person, you can then feel more comfortable explaining what it is that you do and do not like. Cause, there's that whole becoming a grown grown woman or grown man or whatever, we are going to put that meaning to be. But once you start to feel solid in yourself as an adult, I feel much more capable of asserting myself in certain areas.
I think that's very important what you just said, being able to understand yourself enough to know. Because if you don't understand what type of touch you like, what type of touch you don't like, what type of intimacy, and I'm not just talking about sexually, I'm talking about before you even get to that. If you don't know what type of intimacy you enjoy, then you can't explain it to someone. And so only thing we have is our history. So we can only give you what we gave someone else and they seem to like it or not. And they just didn't say anything. So we just keep doing it, So we definitely have to learn how to be more vocal. And when we say more vocal, this is not to say that you have to be rude about it or anything like that. When you're with a partner, you want to be able to explain things to the point where it's not destroying a person's ego, self-esteem, or things like that. You just have a conversation based on what you like so that they can give you what you like and vice versa.
I think this is an important spot to talk about. Something that Dr. Wall brought up before we started recording was about consent versus being coerced. And I think your ability to understand what consent is, as you become older and, you understand sexuality for yourself and with another person, how to give consent to certain activities, or boundaries in certain others.
Yeah, definitely. So I'm going to jump out there and just go ahead and read it verbatim. And we'll have, of course, all of the links in the description box. So y'all don't have to worry about searching for any of this information. So consent is described as an agreement between participants to engage in sexual activity. Consent should be clearly and freely communicated. A verbal and affirmative expression of consent can help both you and your partner to understand and respect each other's boundaries.
And I think that's very important. When you first start dating someone, you may not ask every time. Now, once you ask, can you do something the first time, it's kind of like, yeah, you can. Like, cause I used to ask my husband, okay, can I touch your butt? And he was like, yeah, you can touch it. And, then I guess he realized that can I touch you? And I was like, yeah. And so we don't have to keep asking each other that because now, we're married now. I say we're married now, but that doesn't necessarily mean he has all access either at any time, so even if you're married, you still get consent. And we've done that too. Even though we've, just gotten married, we've gotten consent from each other again. To do or touch or whatever, because sometimes you may just not feel like being touched, and that's me or him. And you don't want to make each other feel bad or feel like, I gotta let him touch me because now, you don't have to do that just because you're married. And y'all get a clear understanding when you get this consent the first time. Like, okay, I'm asking you this time if I can touch you now. Is this something that you want me to do all the time? Are you able to tell me when you don't feel like being touched? Or, you open that space for to have that conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. It makes it more comfortable. Yeah.
Because I was about to say, let me be PMS, and I'm be like, bruh, don't. It's not the day.
Child, y'all already know how I am when I'm cramping.
Okay. So I agree with you that it's an ongoing, even if you have like the blanket consent, you still got like the daily versions of that. But again, I think that also goes back to communication, what you were saying a little bit earlier, in that even though you have like a blanket, like, yes, I'm okay with this behavior, I still have the autonomy to say, not today.
Exactly. We have agency. Yeah, I think that's something that's missed a lot of times is people don't feel like they have agency over their body or they get to say what they want or don't want or that it can change. I think there has to be some flexibility. And as my mom always told me, if you can't talk about sex, you don't need to be having it.
That is so true. Okay, that is so true.
Shout out to Mama Wall.
I know that's right. And I think this is an important topic for people to talk to their teenagers about, even their children about, because of the consent part. I think we've talked about this in one of our parenting ones about forcing your children to go hug Uncle such and such or Aunt something, or if they don't want to, that should be okay. And it doesn't necessarily mean that they've done something to them. Maybe they just don't feel like being touched right now.
Yeah.
So
we don't own people.
Right.
It's so weird.
So just to get into the topic, our topic today is performance versus pleasure-based sex. And performance is basically just focusing on the genital areas, and then pleasure-based is you having more of an intimate moment with your partner, enjoying the intimacy and enjoying each other. And so there's multiple things that's involved in that. And I'm going to let Dr. Wall continue because
our resident sex therapist.
Yes.
She's been waiting almost 2 years to do this.
Yes.
Hilarious. Me too. So before we hop into it, I do want to talk about the bad side of consent, which is coercion. And this is not often talked about because it is like one of the small traumas, the little t, even though we know big T and little t trauma really doesn't exist anymore as we get more and more research. But, we kind of come from the old school psychology thought process for us. But so coercion is going to be the process of attempting to influence another person through the use of threats, punishment, force, direct pressure, and other negative forms of power like guilt tripping, threats of harming someone that they love or their family or something like that. And then also manipulation, aka gaslighting. So I think that's important to realize, especially as we get further and further into our degrees of hotness, as Dr. Strickland described last session. We have to be okay with a no. We have to be okay with a maybe, and then we explore it. We need to be okay with if something is not okay. We're not there to tolerate it. It's not, ooh, this is tolerable, so I should keep going. No, does it feel good? Then let's keep going. So I just want to make sure before we jump fully into that we make sure we discuss that coercion part because that happens so often.
Yeah. I think the thing to remember is consent is active. It is not a passive thing. You cannot passively give consent. You have to actively, yes, and, continue on with the behavior, that shy, timid, unless, again, now this is we'll talk more about this next week, but if you're playing a role, that's different. So the thing with consent, again, like I said, it's active, not passive. So as long as you are communicating, ultimately everything that we've talked about is going to boil back down to communication. So if you guys are doing that, then you already have the understanding from the get-go.
Yes, I agree.
And for people on here that have teenagers and you don't necessarily want them to listen to this topic, but you want to be able to discuss this with them, one of the things that I would suggest is making sure you talk to your teenagers about not giving consent just because either they want to be popular or because they think that their boyfriend or girlfriend will call them names, all of the stuff that we, witnessed or even experienced when we were growing up. That's how dates happen. That's, make sure your teenager feels safe when they're going out on a date with someone, and tell them that they have permission to say no, even to say no for somebody to hold their hand.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's almost like a self-coercion. Sometimes we can, psych ourselves out as well.
I mean, we are products of our society, so it's important to realize just because we may not actively be participating in misogyny or patriarchy or whatever, we have grown up in that. And sometimes it is hard to see that is affecting us. Like if someone were to come up and be like, hey, let me give you a hug. And because we haven't thought about, do I actually want a hug? We'll just be like, oh, okay, well, that's so-and-so. So let me give them a hug. When on that day, you might really not have wanted to be touched. And so it's a level of awareness that we have to get to and be more present for ourselves and for the other generations that are coming up under us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We definitely have to prepare them better.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah. Agreed.
Exactly. So hopping in, let's start out with our mood music. Our mood music this week comes from the Isley brothers, Between the Sheets.
Yeah.
We don't want to get copyrighted there.
Exactly. We promise every session going forward is not going to be the title. So it was just because it worked so well with the topic. But we'll venture into some other things next week. So with performance-based sex, there tends to be a focus on your own expectations. There's not a lot of communication that has taken place before. And even if there is communication, it's still about, okay, this is what I think it should look like or feel like. With biological men, there tends to be this, okay, it's all about penetration. Insert this into this, and then we get to here. With women, it tends to be a lot more fantasized and romanticized. And of course, these are generalizations, people, because all of us women are not like that. You have a tendency to focus on reaching orgasm. You also have a tendency to focus on how much time. Ooh, was it an hour? Was it only a minute? You have all these shoulds that are going on in your brain, and you act them out, and it becomes a very regimented process instead of it being more organic, more sensual. We talked about sensuality last session, and there is no sensuality sometimes when you are only focused on performance.
Do you think that has something to do with a person's experience or lack thereof?
Yeah, definitely. I think you can only do what you know to do, whether that's knowledge-based or experience-based or whatever.
It puts me in the mind of why, our parents say that we need to continue and be virgins until we get married. Because if you're a virgin when you get married, you don't have anything to compare it to.
You don't know nothing.
You don't know nothing. So you just both just stupid.
Not stupid. Well, I think with today's society, I don't think it would work like that anyway, because I think people have enough knowledge at their fingertips to where they can get information prior to being intimate with someone. It don't mean they do it, because obviously, I'm in a whole profession where people don't do that. But I think you might be onto something there.
and because it makes me think about too when someone who has never been married marries someone who has been married. So it's like, that's intimidating. Like, you've been able to do this freely and legally.
Oh, I see where you're going. Okay.
So I ain't been able to do this all the time. Like, I done had a whole lot of years in between. So like, I'm kind of dusting the cobwebs off,
I love that.
I mean, that might be a possibility, but I think what everybody has to realize, regardless of any of that, is that each experience needs to be taken as an opportunity to learn, an opportunity to experience this time for the first time. It's not, okay, I've always done this with all the people that I've been with, but you ain't never done me. Okay, you've never done me. I've never done you, and even if we have, we ain't never done each other this time. So
right.
I think that's the thing. When we get into this rigid mindset of I know best and I know that, like, it is a mood killer. It is it decreases your ability to get to orgasm because you're following this protocol that may not work for this setting.
Yeah, right. I agree. Can you guys think of a reason why performative sex would have a benefit in a sexually active relationship?
One, when someone has just got out of a marriage and they got divorced, and so now they just won't wham bam thank you ma'am, situations, because they're not really there for the other person. Really, they're there for them.
Yeah.
I think it's more of a selfish type of thing. So, okay.
I mean, I would say for myself, no. I don't think there's a time where performative sex or performative intimacy is ever healthy. Because even if this is somebody that you're not trying to be with for more than this one encounter, it's still, if you're more pleasure focused, you're able to be more in the moment. You're sensing their body, you're sensing your own body, you're paying attention to the nuances of the interaction versus it being like like I said earlier, insert A into B, pump a few times, stuff come out. Like that's not that's not how it should go. That's a very cold and clinical way. And I think a lot of times that's just the way we've been conditioned to have sex with each other, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it makes me wonder about people that have been either coupled or relationed for long periods of time, 15, 20, 25 years. There are periods of time where you're not engaging in pleasure-based sex with one another, that you are engaging in performative sex for the purposes of maintenance and maintaining the relationship, maintaining some sort of sexual contact with one another, but it's not necessarily based in pleasure just because of where you guys are at that particular moment. So that's kind of where my head was going. Not that it's a good thing or a healthy thing, but that it has a place.
I don't think anything is wrong with planning your intimate moments. That doesn't necessarily, for me, make it performative. You really may just be busy, or this may be the phase of y'all's life where you said, hey, I'm ready to have a kid, so we need to be a little bit more intentional about it. But it doesn't mean that the experience itself has to be performative. It's just like, hey, it's been 3 days. Our agreement is on the 4th day. We come together. Let's set the environment up to do that. So I don't necessarily look at the reasoning behind it. It's more so when y'all do come together, are y'all able to go to that place of pleasure versus that place of performance?
Yeah. So that's where my head goes on performance versus pleasure. So, is performative strictly like my mind is not there, or it's simply just the act? Or do you get where I'm going? Like, is performative sex purely just the act of performance? Necessarily, like it's all tied to mindset. So even if we are doing we just got to go to work, or we're trying to have a baby, or things like that, because the mindset is tied to something different, that keeps it from being performative.
Yeah,
or is it because it's not based in a purely pleasurable, intimate moment, that's what makes it performative?
Well, I think what you have to focus on is that you're not defining your pleasure by anybody else's standards, because it doesn't have to do with time. It doesn't have to do with technique. It doesn't have to do with anything. It's more so, am I here with this person and are we connecting in a way that we feel is appropriate for us? So that could be your one night stands for people who have, casual sex or random sex. That could be for partner people who've been together for, their whole lives. It's more so about, am I enjoying what I'm doing? or is it a chore? You know, it goes back to what we've talked about when we talk about diagnosis. Like, do I have maladaptive behaviors popping up? Do I have my stinking thinking? Is that popping up? Am I feeling anxious? Oh my gosh, I've never had an orgasm. Oh my God, did I make them have an orgasm? Like, it goes into a place of, if these things don't happen, then it wasn't good. Or it wasn't good enough.
That's a good point. That's a really good point.
That's why I was wondering if it's more pleasure and performative, if it's more based in the mind, not necessarily based in the specific act.
As a man thinks, so is he.
Come on, the word.
So I would definitely say, yeah. And then, you know, like you were saying earlier, you know, the communication. Like, sometimes people are out here having bad sex because they never communicated that they didn't like something, or they do like something, or that they don't know what they're doing. And there's no shame in that. If you've never got any formal training, which the majority of the world has not, why are we assuming that we're going to know what we're doing?
Or watching porn thinking that that's the way the reality is.
Oh my gosh, that is so real.
Part of the research that I was doing on performative, they talked about that people, it was performative in a different kind of way, but they were talking about how people use pornography as a way to figure out how to perform the act of sex.
Yes, that's part of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Even down to the way women breathe. And I'm like, that sounds real fake. Let's not do that. Let's not do that. And side note, you know, your breathing is going to be tied to how much you experience it. Like, your breath should be going throughout your whole body, not just your lungs, because that's where it pumps it. You know what I mean? Like, there's just so much that we don't know. Like, we always talk about get this education, but you're not educated on the stuff that's going to help you on your day-to-day life, how your body works, or how your mind works with your body. So I definitely think it's important that we try to get away from having performance-based sex, because it does become a distraction, and it ends up it elicits all these, you know, poor responses to things, you know, the anxiety, angst, pressure, fear of failure, like all of that stuff pops up when you're having performative sex.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, they're both definitely in your head type of places, but where you are based from is completely different.
Yeah.
And I believe, like, and I'm not saying that women don't experience this, but I believe a lot of men go through that performance base because they feel like they have to perform well, or they didn't put it down and do their little dance. You know, they didn't do their little baby boy dance after he got through, you know.
Fix me some tacos.
Right? I agree. When it's like that, there is a lessening of vulnerability. Like, you did this just because you thought this was the way you were supposed to do it. Like, based off of a song, or based off of some type of image, pornography, some type of book, or, you know, the myth of having orgasms happen at the same time. Like, you know what I mean? Like, there's so much BS out there. It's not to say that you can't reach for these things or want to try to work on that. But if that is what classifies as the perfect experience for you, you're going to have a lot of bad sex then.
Oh, yeah.
Man.
A lot.
Ooh. Ew, you just burst some people's bubbles.
Well, I think that for sure. And I definitely think that media in general, you know, whether that's movies, books, TV, and now social media, has really confused a lot of people when it comes to sexuality, sexual activity, sexual desire, arousal, excitement, you know, all of those, climax. I think people have become very confused. One, because there's so much information available now. You get bombarded with so many different things and shoulds. You should be doing this. The best way to do this. 15 ways to do this. or, there's so much out there, and it's like, who's telling the truth? All of them? None of them? Some of them?
Mm. Yeah. I think that's why it's good for you and your partner to have a conversation. That way, because the best 15 ways to do this, or, things like that may not work for y'all. It may have worked for them, and whoever wrote it, and it may have worked for some people that they taught it to. Yeah. But it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to work for you and your partner. That's why, again, it's important to have conversation with your partner. And the thing about it is, if you can't have conversation with your partner, you're with the wrong partner, because you should be able to communicate with your partner. Both of you should be able to communicate with each other about your sex life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with that.
Where do you guys think fear plays a role in this? Because just in my experience in working with some women, there's this huge fear about self-exploration, masturbation, looking at their body, and not even in a sex way, looking at your body, like literally looking at various parts of self. Where do you guys think fear plays a role in that, or societal pressures on people to not self-explore?
Yeah. I definitely will say, because we live here in America, and the America that we know was founded by Puritans and, people who were heavily religious, regardless if they were following through with their religious beliefs. Those were the things that they founded this country on, even though there were people clearly here way before that. And because of that, there's a lot of judgment. And if you don't do this like this, you're going to hell. And the tactics that are used in that type of faith-based initiative, we don't call it what it is, shame, guilt tripping, unworthiness. You're not ever going to make it to heaven. You're going straight to hell with gasoline draws on,
Right.
Stuff like that is so steeped into our sexuality that we don't even realize how we have had like generational sexual trauma based off of these beliefs.
Yeah.
And so it's hard to get past that, even to the education. Like prior to the Victorian era, we knew all about the vulva and the vaginal canal. And then all of a sudden around the Victorian era, that information is removed from the books. And now people are more into that. Like people think the clitoris is like this little half an inch thing or more. And really it's this whole big old structure. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So there's just so much information that we don't have. And there's so much judgment about what's right and what's wrong, instead of realizing none of us are cookie cutter.
Right. I think to add to that, with African American women, we were taught not to love ourselves anyway. If I don't love myself, why do I want to look at myself in the mirror, whether or not it's sexually or otherwise? I don't want to look at myself because don't nobody want me, don't nobody love me, don't nobody think I'm beautiful, people think I'm ugly anyway, so why do I need to look at what ugliness is?
Yeah.
I 100% agree with what you're saying. And then I also think, in a slightly kind of bigger sense, is that we're also not taught to appreciate the bodies of other people. So that we have this shame of looking at other people when they're nude, so that we don't know, then we feel shame and not knowing if what we look like is quote unquote normal.
Yes.
If some people, just thinking about the shape of breasts, you have, long and east-west and north-south, and there's all kinds of things.
Yes.
What we have is normal.
Mm-hmm.
Or if our genital region looks quote unquote, again, normal. Because there's so much shame, for one, about looking at other people's bodies, which is why a lot of people watch porn in private.
That is true.
And speaking specifically on American culture, we're very prudish but secretly sexual society.
Mm-hmm.
Growing up overseas, it was very much more open. I remember riding the train one time, and there was this newspaper, and there was a naked woman just on the front of the newspaper. And it was like, nobody batted an eye. Nobody, like, it wasn't a thing to just see this nude person. Now, this is like, the late 80s, early 90s, but so I don't know how that is now. But back then, it just really wasn't a thing. And it's so sad that our culture thinks that everything should be hidden, like, mock necks up to your chin.
Or that everything's sexual.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because you'll get arrested and registered as a sex offender if you walk around here nude.
Yeah.
Oh, no, only as a woman. Because you can walk around as a man with your shirt off and nobody will say anything.
That is true.
But if you even if you're a man that has breasts, nobody will say anything. Plenty of men out here who got a mastiff.
Yes. I concur with that.
Yes. We've been body shaming each other for so long that when if we look in the mirror, we look in the mirror to compare ourselves to a Dr. Wall or a doctor. Because, if y'all haven't seen Dr. Wall, I love her hips. She has hips and I don't. So I'm so jealous.
Thicker than a snicker, boy.
I absolutely love it.
My mama did it. My mama gave it to me.
So it's like, okay, and not that I do this, but I'm just saying, like, if I am comparing myself to Dr. Wall, I'm looking in the mirror and I'm like, oh, my hips don't look like Dr. Wall. I don't want to look at myself, And so we just do things like that. So we don't want to look at ourselves in the mirror, and that's a non-sexual way. I just love her hips and I don't have them.
Yeah, that's actually something that I have my clients do, is the mirror activity, where they have to look into the mirror and they have to tell themselves, what do I see? And you have to try to just go off the observation, not this isn't right, or I don't like this. Then you can get into that. And then I want you to get into what you do like. Like, there are so many individuals in the world who have never seen their genitalia, like never looked at it. You've been wiping and touching them your whole life, but you don't know what they look like. You don't know what color they are, none of that stuff. Just a personal story from my own life. Me and a group of my friends, we recently started going to like the bathhouses here in the Metroplex, and we go and we have made a commitment to go to the nude part of it and be nude and experience it fully, to be more grounded. Now me, I don't care. You know what I'm saying? I don't care.
We know.
But say freedom, hedonism, here I come.
I'm so thankful that my mom and my grandparents raised me that way, but I know that's not everybody's experience. And so the first encounter was rough. Your insecurities are coming up, and even though I'm free, I'm still like, I'm not going to do this unless I'm doing this with my girls, because what if somebody out here try to get me? Like, I'm going that route. But
you do realize you're going to have to give a 101 on what a bathhouse is.
Oh, yes. So a bathhouse, you see these more so in Europe and Asia, but essentially the ones that we frequent here in DFW is called Spa Castle or King Spa. And so you go there. It's a kind of a one-stop place where you can get facials, massages, pedicures, all that kind of stuff. But then the other side of that is saunas of different temperatures. The actual bathhouse part is in an enclosed part of the facility, and it's gender-based, and they will go off of the gender that you identify as. Most of them do, as long as you've already had your surgeries and different things like that, because you are going to be fully nude if you go into that part. And so you have different medicinal waters that you're getting into based off of temperature. Some of them have herbs in them, different pressures. Like you are essentially detoxing your body in natural ways that we as Americans don't do. And so that's one of the things, like when we go, we always look at the people like, oh my gosh, they're naked. Oh my gosh, this is going on. And then I'm just like, y'all do realize we all got the same stuff in here. Even though, I know I don't got all the same stuff, because some of my stuff is in a facility somewhere, since I've had, bilateral vasectomy because of my breast cancer. But I just look at it and I'm like, okay, let me stay in my body. Let me stay focused on like how I'm feeling in this experience. Because the last time that we went, I even asked my friend, I was like, okay, what do my breasts look like to y'all? Because this is my first time that I'm sharing my body with somebody since I've had, a surgery. And they were like, they look normal. I said, can y'all go into more detail? Like, I want y'all to really look at
like, that's real basic.
Right, like, normal. I said, this is part of my own healing. And I want y'all to tell me, like, what are y'all seeing in my body? And so then they gave me their explanations, and we talked about our own body issues and stuff like that. But that's just not something we do as Americans.
I think people are so afraid of things like that, especially, I hate to keep saying especially men, because it's, how can I say this nicely?
We don't have to be nice. Just make sure I don't have to edit you too much.
Because they don't want to do that because it's a part of the community. They think it's a part of more swaying them apart to be a part of the community.
Oh, part of the alphabet mafia.
Yeah.
I see. That's true.
They do think that.
Yeah. And so I think, and I think for some women, the same thing, I'm like, I think people are afraid of being in tune and in contact with other people of the same gender and being nude.
Yeah. I'm like, if somebody can change you that quickly, you already were that. You were just in denial.
Facts.
I ain't even got nothing to say. Where's my?
I was like, I didn't have nothing else to say that way.
Where's my hang up button? I don't even have nothing to say after that.
But I think all of this still boils back down to what we've been talking about pleasure. Understanding, having that level of comfort with being able to show your body, and let someone else look at it in a non-sexual way.
Yeah.
And once you get there, if I can, because it makes me think about when I was younger, like changing for gym and stuff like that. Man, I would be number one in the whole take your bra off and you still got your shirt on kind of person.
Okay.
That's
the closest we get to a bathhouse is gym.
Gym.
Yeah, or people that do like majorette or cheerleading, things like that.
Yeah.
Or sports. But my head goes to people are afraid of being judged. Yeah. Because we've talked before, we don't feel comfortable in looking at our own body. So heaven forbid somebody else looking at it.
Yeah. And like I've said before, what other people think of you is none of your business. And we're judging. Say that all the time.
Yeah. But we're judging ourselves thinking about what we think you're judging us over.
Yes.
Right. And I also think it's difficult because the way society has trained us to be as well. When I first moved to Texas, I moved in with one of my girlfriends, and she had a daughter and a son. And so I stayed in the same room with her daughter, who was younger at that time. And so, of course, once you get out of the bathroom, you come into the room and, get dressed. And I still had my towel on. So she was in there one time and I was like, hey, I'm not trying to, like flash. I'm just getting dressed. She was like, that's okay. I know. And so I just kept my back to her the whole time because it's like, I don't want nobody to think I'm trying to, but because I was sex offenders, I'm very meticulous about things like that. Yeah. Because I don't ever want to be abused.
That's understandable. I almost was in tears the times that we went to the bathhouse, because each time that we've gone, there's always a mother and daughter there. And I'm like, that is just so beautiful to see this mom intentionally pouring into their daughter about their body, and this is how we do this. They're showing them how to, go take your shower first before you get in. This is what we do. This is how it was so beautiful. And I was like, man, can you imagine if we all got that from birth?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I recently went to a deprivation tank, over the holidays, and you cannot wear any clothes. You have to be nude in the deprivation tank. And it was just me. It ain't like I'm in a room with a whole bunch of other people, but knowing that I'm in this space it's like it's not typical for us to be nude in a place other than our home.
Yeah. The bathroom.
Again, in American society, it's, you know, in our bedroom or in our bathroom, or sometimes just walking around your own home, but it's your spot, your safe sanctuary or whatnot. So even that still felt weird to be completely nude, laying in this salt bath, but I'm by myself. Nobody sees me. It just getting out of your own head to really get into the moment and enjoy and relax. Is, you know, tell yourself that this is okay.
Yeah.
It's so much going on in the world right now, and we could all use some extra support. At Balance Beacon, we offer counseling services for individuals, couples, families, and groups. If you're in Texas, give us a call at 214-396-6503 or visit our website at www.balancebeacon.com for more information.
So jumping full-fledged into pleasure-based, we've been talking about it as we've been going on, but there's something called the Erotic personality test that I think everybody would love to take. And it has 5 different erotic styles. And so you can take that on www.miss.
Let me go ahead and get that in there. www.
Miss, and that's in MISS, Jaya, JAIYA.com. So we can definitely talk about this on our next session, but for our interns, I think this would be lovely to figure out your erotic blueprint and figure out how you like to receive pleasure, and use it as a tool. You know, it's not the end all be all, but it's a great tool. But when you think about pleasure, you need to be focused on like what feels good, like what makes you feel relaxed, calm, the sensation, what tastes good to you, what don't taste good. Because I've had to have that conversation with many a couple. Y'all need to get your diets together because some ain't tasting quite right. But it's more about what you are experiencing and not the actual act of sex.
Yeah, I think people forget that pleasure is an experience.
Yes.
That it is a full-fledged, all-encompassing experience. It's not just a moment in time. So and that goes back to what you were saying, Dr. Wall. You know, last session we were talking about sensuality and experiencing life through your senses. Pleasure is the same way. It is a full body experience. You know, it's hard to I'm just going to experience pleasure on the tip of my index finger. Like, it doesn't work that way. Okay.
That's literally what people be saying. Like, I'm only going to experience sex in this 1/3 of my vaginal canal. I'm only going to experience it on the shaft of my penis. Like, where they do that at? Like, when you really sit down and think about that, that's real crazy.
Agreed.
Yeah. Like, I don't have anything else to add to that because I think you ladies have covered that overseas.
Yeah.
And I think,
go ahead.
I'm sorry. I was going to say, I think one of the other important things that just looking at some of the research on pleasure-based sex is the idea that orgasm is a bonus and it's not the ultimate goal. The goal is the engaging. The goal is the connection. And that if we get to the point of having orgasm, then shoot, that was just the icing on the cake.
Yeah, it's a collaboration between you and your partner or partners. Like, it's not this one size fits all. Like, it's very unique to the experience of the two of you. And so, you know, you're having regular check-ins, and check-ins doesn't mean like, is that hurting you? Like, no, it's do you like that? Does that feel good? Or if you are someone who can be more tuned in, you can tell by the way their breathing changes. You can tell by the way their body clenches or unclenches. But, you know, we're not even going to go too far. People are not aware. You know, most people are still having sex statistically with the lights off, still with some type of clothing on, so that I can tell when my clients come in just how pleasure-based they are versus, performance-based by what they describe as their sexual encounters of each other.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's that fear and lack of knowledge, ignorance, not in a like you're stupid kind of way, but literally that I just don't know. I don't know any better.
Yeah.
And I don't know who to ask because we have, again, like we talked before, there's so much shame around sexuality that I don't know who to ask. You dare not ask your parents.
No.
So you learn from your friends, you learn from various types of media and previous partners. So then you get this mishmash of bad info, and then,
or you go to porn. Let porn teach you.
Yeah. That, and it's definitely going to teach you the wrong way.
Yeah.
Especially the way porn is now, versus maybe the porn of yesteryear. And I'm talking maybe the porn from the 80s and before, where it was much more, story-driven pornography, versus porn now is a lot of chopped up, images. So you may find a lot of videos out there, but you don't get the story form of porn now, because you have things like, we could list out a bunch of porn sites, but you get video clips. So it's clips of extended videos because most people want it free. They don't want to go pay for their pornography anymore. Whereas back then you would get now I'm not saying these are good stories, but you would get a whole movie, in regards to it. There was much more build up to the sexual act versus now it's, I want to.
They knocking on the door and it's gone. It's happening.
Right. Or it's a 10-minute clip and it starts. Like they already going as soon as the clip starts. So people don't see pleasure anymore. They don't see eroticism. They don't see arousal. They see sex act.
Yeah.
But you also have to understand we are living in the microwave times. Everybody wants things quick.
Well, if you don't know how to be intimate quick, stop trying to do it. That's what I would say to people that want that. Because it's possible, but you do need to work at it. You do need to figure some things out. Something that I talk a lot about with my clients, because typically they're coming in because there's some type of sexual issue going on, is there's no requirement or expectation from any person that is in this sexual experience. It doesn't require an erection. It doesn't require your vaginal canal to be wet. It doesn't require a certain body type or skill level. It is literally about what are we going to create with each other. And it ends when anybody says that they want it to end. We don't conceptualize this in a way that's healthy for us.
We don't. We have been so traumatized and brainwashed for this topic. This topic, period, is just taboo.
It is.
It is. And just thinking about us, we're very comfortable talking about sex and sexual things, but even we laugh. Yeah. And because it is something that has become so ingrained in who we are that it is hard. It takes a lot of work to get out of your head, to break societal norms, to find your people. Next week we'll be talking about, kinks and things like that. So, finding your people, like it takes a lot of work to jump out of that box.
Yeah. Yeah. What are some things that y'all feel benefit or can help the interns or clients or yourself when you think about getting closer to being pleasure focused instead of performance focused?
I would say slow down and expand your focus. Like, don't go straight to the genitals. Go to caressing the head or the neck or the hands or the arms. Caressing
elbows.
Eyebrows, who cares?
I am not. You slid that right in there too.
Yeah, she did. I was like, wait a minute. I was like, wait. We got a story for that. Wait.
We can't tell it though. We can't tell it.
No. Lord have mercy. I'm gonna let that slide. That's that inside joke again, interns.
I think something that works really well, and you are going to fidget and be uncomfortable with this exercise, is the gaze into each other's eyes and cycling your breath together. Like, people don't realize how out of sync they are until you have to breathe with somebody. Mm-hmm. Like, is that breath too deep for me? Is it too shallow for them? Why am I so uncomfortable with looking into my partner's eyes when I'm willing to lick all over their body and have stuff inserted into me? Like, that's not rational. Mm-hmm. So I love giving that exercise to my clients.
Mm-hmm. I would add, set aside 30 minutes to do like love play. Create a game, or is a card game that you can purchase because I have it. But buy a card game and just do love play, and then it doesn't necessarily have to end in sex.
No. There's something that I like to use, the Gottman card decks, if you like to have stuff on your phone. So the Gottman card decks has a whole like section on, that's kind of where I got the jalapeno reference, spicy levels. So they have a whole sexual section where they have like low, medium, and, hot. And the cards, of course, vary in level and, intensity. But I would also say we talked about this a little bit, but start really looking at you. Start exploring yourself, so that you understand what you do and don't like. Because until you do, it is going to be difficult to engage in pleasure-based sex. So not being afraid to touch yourself non-sexually as well as touch yourself sexually.
Mm-hmm. And I like the mirror exercise that Dr. Wall discussed earlier, because I actually give that assignment to my women who believe they are overweight. I have them to do the mirror exercise in a different way. I have them to do the mirror exercise and caress their body, not sexually, but just enjoying their own touch and enjoying their own body. So I would say to do that. Say that again.
Sensually.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah. Another one I like is makeout sessions. Like, I can't tell you how many couples I see that they can't remember the last time they made out. I said, so the only type of physical intimacy y'all are having is penetration? That's what you're telling me? So you don't know how to hold each other in an embrace. You don't know how to kiss each other. You don't know how to rub on each other. Like a massage. Like, there's so many things that we just are like, oh, I'm getting to the meat and potatoes. Like, I'm just going to hop in. I don't need all that foreplay. Yeah, you do. Yeah, you do. Foreplay is not just for penetration. It's for the experience.
Yeah. I think people forget that because our society drives home one thing.
Mm-hmm. We have to work on changing our mindset on what performance and pleasure is. Knowing the difference between them and figuring out what it is that you want.
Mm-hmm. Of course. At the end of the day, if you don't understand you and your wants, needs, and desires, how in the world are you going to ever experience, I hate to use the word happiness because I feel like that's not quite the right word, but how are you going to experience that in any sense? Because you're dumb to yourself.
I agree. Okay.
Yeah. I love the tantric activities. So I would also encourage people to look up tantric types of sex, tantric activities, because they are very sensual and based. Like the one Dr. Wall was just talking about, the gaze. So if you want to get more into performance, pleasure, or performing pleasurably, I encourage people to look up some tantric sexual activities.
Well, Dr. Strickland, you want to give us our next session?
Yes. So next session, boy, we tiptoeing. We was wading in the kiddie pool just a minute ago. So now we get ready to jump into the deep end, because deep end, now we getting into the nasty, the dirty, the painful sometimes. you know, the nitty gritty of all the ways that you can experience sexual activity. And baby, some of the research that I found on the ways people enjoy sex blew my mind. And I'm not afraid of sexual stuff, so I'm like, ooh, even I was like, oh Lord, let me clutch my invisible pearls. But we talking about kinks next week, so all of the wild, weird, and crazy things that people can be into, how people get into those, what's that's based in, how to, you know, limit your shame regarding those things. So we're getting into the people that's really out here doing it.
Yes. I'm excited.
Yeah, I told you, I said, I got my research ready for this one. I got like 5 articles and stuff. I was like, yes. I got a lot of stuff.
Yes, and interns, don't forget, like Dr. Strickland has also told you, this month's MMB is going to be 3 movies. So please do it before time. You know, whether that's the movie or your partner, but do it before time so that you can go ahead and have it. Cause I know a lot of y'all like to follow with us as we go through it. And I don't want y'all to be like, oh man, I only looked at the first one. So the trilogy of 50 Shades of Grey is what we are going to be reviewing. And this is also our very first film that is not Black. So
I know,
you know, we couldn't find an appropriate, sexual film with Black people because we don't really do stuff halfway as Black people. Yeah. So this was the most edited one we could do.
Because they out there.
Most PG.
That's a difference for them.
Right.
Exactly.
And we always end off with a quote.
So today's quote is from Tom York, and it reads, "Sex is more than an act of pleasure. It's the ability to be able to feel so close to a person, so connected, so comfortable that it's almost breathtaking to the point you feel you can't take it. And at this moment, you're a part of them."
Must be this volume control.
So, okay, interns, process your notes. Be sure to catch us next session and find us on all major platforms at The Recycled Podcast.
If you're a new intern, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and share.
Thanks for listening. And remember, we are shifting and reshaping our psyche through healing conversations and connections, one discussion at a time.